This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and a roaming list of wonderful and interesting visitors. And today I'm joined by Alfie Nickerson, who is a young guy who I came across through a mutual friend called Tom Hammock, who's a painter, who has painted and done some amazing woodcuts of Alfie's extraordinary dahlia fields in North Norfolk. And he has this flower farm in a really quite remote part of the British Isles, which I think is such an impressive thing because it's brave enough to grow dahlias, I think, en masse, but then to try and get them to market in London. And so I've been really interested in talking to Alfie because for me, it's such an achievement what he's done. And he's so young. So welcome, Alfie. It's very, very nice to chat to you. Will you just tell us a little bit about your personal story? So I know you're brought up in Norfolk, but kind of from when you were a boy to now being a renowned flower farmer.
Well, I wouldn't say renowned, but I started off living in London for the first 23 years of my life, of which I finished school when I was 18 and decided that I never wanted to basically be inside again. So I moved outside almost to the day after my final exam and started working in London with sort of 3 or 4 different gardeners all doing different sort of things between maintenance and landscaping, basically. And I sort of had this thing after doing it for 6 years where I hit this wall of living in London and feeling not fulfilled in terms of what I really loved about the gardening aspect of it. So I loved just growing things from seed all the way through to seeing the blooms at the end. And I was doing this on a much smaller scale. I was actually doing it with trees in my garden in London. And just slowly started to realise that if I was going to do this for a longer period of time, I needed to completely change it up. So I decided basically I was going to try and grow vegetables in Norfolk on a much smaller scale, just sort of trying to ease my way into it. And me and my friend Richard, we decided that we looked at all the different methods of growing flowers and vegetables, and we decided that biodynamics seemed the most interesting, mainly just because of like how much there is more to learn. So it's just, you're Googling all the different methods of where you think it is. And when we stumbled across biodynamics, we were like, wow, this looks absolutely like a different kind of growing, which neither of us knew even existed. And then we just sort of slowly started to do more and more research into where we should go. And we stumbled across Fern Verrow, Jane Scotter, and we read her cooking book. And we were like, this girl is amazing. We've got to go and try and meet her. And we were doing this in about November time. Came up with the idea the year before. Then about November time, we messaged Jane saying, we'd love to come and volunteer at your place if you've got a spot for the two of us. And this is when, I think now when you volunteer at Fern Verrow, you're in quite a nice sort of hut. When we went, we were in like a tent with our pillows were like freezing cold.
Wow.
If you go out at night to do a pee, you'd literally freeze and couldn't go back to sleep again. It was like properly rough, but like the days were incredibly long. And Jane, when you arrived, we arrived sort of thinking, God, this is going to be a sort of 6-week holiday, hanging out with your best mate, like going to get stuck into like a bit of growing. It's going to be sunny. It's going to be, we had like a cider on the first night thinking, we're lucky to be here. And then within about 3 days, we were like, wow, this is
hardcore,
incredibly hardcore. Like, this is insane. Jane has been doing it for 30 years and she's sort of very small and just like one of the biggest work like horses I've ever seen. And it's like amazing. And you just get inspired and slowly she like let us in, realizing that, we both like enjoy our weekends as well. So we were in the middle of Wales, sort of 4 hours away from anything else. But every weekend we would go and do something. So then when we came back on the week, we'd have all these tales of what we'd been up to. And she sort of, we had this amazing like sort of time there where we sort of like all fell in love with each other just very slowly. She doesn't let you in straight away.
Yeah.
And then she gave us a potato. I mean, this sounds so silly, but she gave us a potato one day to like have for our dinner. And we ate this thing and I was like, this is the most delicious thing I've ever had in my life. So then we were like hooked. We were like, this is just like the best way to grow things.
Yeah.
And then she said to us, she was like, Alfie, if I was you guys in your stage of your life, she was like, I would be growing fields of flowers, not vegetables. So she was the one who sort of like angled us in towards it. And the first year we did grow vegetables and some flowers, but just the amount of effort everything takes to grow anything is insane. So you have to do what you can basically financially grow and try and support.
Yeah. And so you moved from Fern Verrow back to where your family had some land and you just got stuck in.
So we basically, the year before in that winter, we put a big bit of black matting down on the area which we were planning on doing it on.
What's the soil like there? Is it sandy?
It's extremely sandy.
Yeah.
It's literally a beach. And you go through, it's like sand for like the first sort of 2 foot. And when you get to this gravel layer, and then like below that gravel layer, it is just like soft sand. And I mean, it has its benefits and it has its advantages, obviously. But the big advantage is that we basically just have to add loads of manure every year. But often things don't get, flooded. And I mean, the West Country just sounds so hard to grow in.
Yeah. At least you've got drainage, exactly.
At least we've got drainage.
Yeah. And so you got stuck in and started planting through your Mypex or whatever it was. So quite quickly you stopped the veg and moved more and more onto the flowers.
Yes, the only vegetables I grow now are cucumbers and tiny snacks. I'm obsessed with just like eating things as I work. So we've got sort of like 80 fruit trees too. So as the year goes through, we're all sort of snacking on, gooseberries, cranberries, but also we might get apples and pears and cherries.
Oh, nice.
And we can eat sort of 4 or 5 cucumbers each a day. So we have to have lots of cucumbers in the polytunnel.
Oh, that's nice. That's brilliant. And nature is, so you say that London life didn't suit you. And so life in the countryside is fundamental to you.
Well, I don't have very many hobbies. So being in London, I'm very unproactive. Like, I don't go to the theatre. I don't really enjoy going to the cinema. Whereas in the countryside, I'm just like constantly have something to do and something to be busy with. And I was getting into this like habit of just basically crashing out on my couch at the end of a day's work and not really being up for anything. Where being in the countryside, I'm just like re-energized every day. And you're so much more in tune just with how the year is going by. I mean, it's...
Well, that's it. Yeah. Every day.
Yeah, every day.
Something different gets one and inspires one. Yeah, completely. And so what's the acreage now or the hectares now of what you're cultivating?
So we're on about 3 acres and we do about 20,000 annuals or sow a seed every year. Wow. And we have about 3,500 dahlias. Well, we will have it by spring this year.
Yeah. Gosh.
And then we've got all the perennials. And basically each year we almost double it in size.
Really?
It's the sort of general progression of it, yeah.
Wow, okay. And how many of you is we? Who's your team?
My team is basically built up of mainly florists who want to grow. So I have about 5 or 6 of us on rotation. So in terms of like the busiest time of year, there'll be 6 of us there. But the thing is that it's such hard work and getting the best out of people. Like 5 days a week with everyone, everyone's just exhausted.
Yeah.
And so it's actually better, like most people do like 3 or 4 days a week rather than doing 5 days a week. And, most of these people too, they're very creative. So they all have like sort of side projects or side things which they do.
Yeah.
So they're very happy to, not be slugging it on a field of flowers every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you get the flowers picked and then to your market? So to other florists and to London and to events and everything, how does it work?
So we have, I mean, this is again, I mean, it's progressed and changes through the years which I've done it. And the way we do it now is we cut them. So one of our big delivery days is on Friday delivery, essentially. So the flowers have to get cut on a Wednesday and conditioned to be packaged on a Thursday. And so on that day, it's just picking from, 9 to 10 hours of picking for the whole day. And the idea is we want to try and bring the flowers down to as cool as possible. Ideally, we would have a fridge. Hopefully we might get one this year, but again, things are very expensive. And if we're sending them to people's houses, we'll wrap them in, we call them nappies. They're like this sort of eco wrap, like they literally look like a nappy. And we try, everything again is it's so hard to get the preciseness of the flower to be perfect for when they arrive at the door. And you have to try and cut them early enough that they will bloom in full. But then also if you go too over, they can get damaged in the post. But for all the events and everything else we do, we basically have to have, we do 3 or 4 weddings a week in the sort of height of the season. So we'll be doing basically just private delivery vans is the only way.
Yeah.
And buckets of water. I think last year we must have probably lost like 500 or 600 just buckets of flowers where florists never returned them.
Yes, of
Constantly
course.
buy flowers and buckets.
Yeah. And I'm rather embarrassed to say I don't think I've actually said the name of your business, which is Burnt Fen Flowers, which I should have said right at the outset. But how do people get in touch with you if they wanted to order flowers from you? How do they get in touch with you?
Luckily now it's all through the website, but for the first 3 years, it wasn't through the website. It was literally send me a message. It used to be I used to basically do a photo of the flowers and say, who wants a bunch of flowers? Because originally it was just in London. So I just do a post saying, who wants flowers? And then people would just write me a message with their address on it. And then the next day I'd run around trying to deliver them all. So that's how I did it at the beginning. I'd pick flowers all day, pack them up, drive to London, get there like midnight, then wake up the next day, deliver them all in London, and then drive back up to Norfolk again.
Wow.
For 2 years.
Yeah.
So the first time we sent them out in boxes, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Yeah. Let the courier do it for me.
Let the courier do the work.
Even if they leave some of them on the wrong doorstep. And so when you left Fern Verrow and you went back to Norfolk, one of the important things to you, I guess, having had Jane as your mentor, would be nature and biodiversity. So how did you go about kind of integrating that with your business?
It's basically trying to work with it and connect the whole place together, as in everything has a purpose, as in aphids are feeding the ladybirds. So if you try to wipe out all the aphids, you're actually then meaning that the ladybirds can't eat anything. So if you can create a sort of balance in it. So on the edges, again, a lot of this is actually not having the perfect looking flower patch or garden, essentially, and being able to allow that all the bits which are on the edges are left, and basically where all the insects can also live. It's almost like they live in harmony together, but as a human we think we don't like these ones because of a certain reason, but actually they're really useful for everything else. And the field which I started off in is a field of grass, and you can walk through there and you cannot see any wildlife for sort of 10 acres past the bit which I do. And on the bit which I am, there's butterflies everywhere. Yeah. There's birds everywhere. There's things nesting in the trees, all in the hedges around me. And every year that increases. We do worm counts, for example, where we try and every year we'll dig up a metre square of soil and count all the worms in it to see if our soil is actually improving. And it's just something which is very easily visible if you live within it. Yeah.
And how 2025 will be, how many years since you began?
5 years.
Yeah. And almost straight away you saw nature returning to your area, to your little bit.
Within 5 months. It's crazy. You also think that you need to add in all of this extra stuff for it, but actually you don't. You just need to leave it and it will all come.
Yeah, it just arrives. Yeah,
it just arrives.
Yeah, that is so exciting. And so that's absolutely part of the whole plan going forward. You would always completely. And will you stick with biodynamics as well?
We'll definitely sit with biodynamics. We're trying to incorporate more like agroforestry into it too. So we have like rows of trees running through the whole of our patch down the centre of it. Like in between, we get rid of one flower bed and we plant trees all the way through it. And again, that's just for the nature of it.
Mixed habitat, yeah.
Just mixed habitat and trying to, you almost create these like barriers where you can just see the animals moving from one side to the other side. And it's the most enjoyment I get out of a day is seeing something. So my big plan is to try and get a swallowtail butterfly.
Oh, yes.
And
coming
you can
across
get them in the marshes.
from France.
Coming across from France.
Yeah. I've had one in my garden once.
You've had one?
Yeah.
Well, you've done it then. You can
No, but I want more.
You've done a goal, yeah. I've only ever seen one. So I want to... We're planting up loads of the plant which they lay their eggs in.
Is it sweet? Is it Hesperus? Is it sweet rocket?
It's a Culver's root. It's a kind of carrot.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think so.
Great. Yeah.
Well, I hope I've grown the right thing.
No, well, I couldn't agree more. That whole kind of, it's so funny, isn't it? That if you garden without doing that, it feels to me as if you've removed all the actors and actresses in a way. It's just like you're missing all these different layers of beauty that it's just, why would you want to do that?
Yeah, I know. We also, for example, we built this natural beehive where we hollowed out a log and we put it up thinking that bees were going to go and live in it. And actually the first thing which came to live in it was hornets. And we were oh, for God's sake, that's so annoying. We've got hornets here. Yeah. But one thing is that they will also eat the aphids. So, everything, you might build something for something to come and live in it, but something completely else comes and does a job for you.
Brilliant. And so I suppose for sort of take home for everybody who aren't going to be flower farmers, I would love you to tell us, I don't know, maybe your 5 favourite annuals and your 5 favourite dahlias.
It's interesting because, my favourite annual, it's a kind of grass, it's called Panchium sprinkles. It's like a sort of fluffy grass, and I also love it for drying. So with terms of flowers, the ones which I really love are ones which give me the most out of them. Yeah. Because basically every flower, you have to put in this almost the same amount of effort for each one. Yeah. And so something like that which gives and gives and gives. And all of the annuals which I've chosen are ones which I think do give me plenty. So I've chosen Panchium sprinkles and Helichrysums just because you can also dry them. So both of those you can dry amazingly, and everything's on such a tight time limit to being able to pick it. So if you miss the time, you can send them fresh. You can at least dry them. Annie I've chosen just because of the clouds in it. It can be slightly annoying because it can like drop all of its little white things on people's tables, so people can get slightly annoyed sometimes. But I just think it's too beautiful not to have in it. And
is that majors not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then zinnias. Yeah. Mainly because they're my mum's favourite. And I grew them one year. And it's weird, sometimes you can grow things exactly the same 2 years in a row. And it just, you don't know why, but sometimes they're 5 foot tall and sometimes they only get 2 foot tall. Yeah. Just external reasons which you can't control. And I grew them one year zinnias and they grew so awfully here in Norfolk. And I'm never doing them again. And then my mum was like, Alfie, they're my favourite. You've got to try doing them again. And then the next year I got them and they were like 5 foot tall. And I was like, these guys are the best.
Yeah. It's light levels, isn't it? Zinnias need lots of light. Yeah. And poppies, I went with a Black Swan annual variety. Yeah. I just think they're amazing. I also see like Burnt Fen Flowers in the area where it is. It's in this like big sort of field of grass. And each year, all of the hardy annuals which let their seed go, I'll start seeing random flowers like popping up sort of 20, 30 foot away. And I'm like, if this keeps going in like whatever 50 years, there could be flowers sort of all over. Yeah, the whole of Norfolk might get. That's a very nice image.
Yeah.
Great. But how do you make Black Swan last for your customers getting it to London?
Well, we first of all send them when they're completely closed.
Okay.
There's a tiny seal on them. Yeah. We also do a lot of floristry ourselves. Yeah. So I was trying to also choose things which we don't use loads in the bunches. And they do travel well. If you send them again, you'll miss 9 out of 10 will just be on the wrong time of you've missed them a week. They've either gone too far or they're not ready yet for the day which you want them. But the ones which are ready, I think, are amazing. Mm. And the time which they flower in that sort of after the spring bulbs, essentially.
Yes, yeah. early June.
Very hard time of year for the growers to have like a sort of star flower.
Yes, yeah, it is a real star. Yeah, absolutely. And dahlias?
Oh, dahlias. I've gone with my favourites, Down and Peggy. Again, the reason why is because the way we send them, it's much handier having them darker coloured rather than lighter coloured. They get very bruised very easily.
Yeah.
And so I've gone with Down and Peggy with my favourite. And then as my second favourite, I've gone with Hamari Rose.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And pink is by far my favourite colour of flowers. And so the Hamari Rose, I think, is just amazing. And then I went with a mini cactus, which we don't send in bunches, but we use a lot in the floristry, as the Trailwind Kiwi.
Oh, I don't know that.
It's white and sort of got dark purple tips on the edge of it.
A trailing kiwi or
Trailwind.
Trailwind.
Trelwyn.
I don't know that. That's going on my trial list.
And Jowie Winnie.
Yeah, I love that.
It was almost my favourite, but then it doesn't get quite as tall as some of the others.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's amazing. And then Rosemary Dawn is just it's just beautiful.
Good. Well, that is so good, because lots of those I don't know particularly. So that's so exciting to... some of them I do, but not all of them. Yeah. Or I might know the family. Like I know the Hamari family, but I don't know Hamari Rose. So that's exciting for me to try lots of new ones. And I really want to come and visit, as I'm sure lots of people will. But are you open or not really, Alfie?
I don't like people coming into my, it's my office. There's only one rule, and that rule is you can't walk on the beds.
Yeah.
But I just... having lots of people coming and seeing it, I just get quite stressed about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be amazing to be able to try and open it up, but it's just, it's like people do workshops, and, lots of people in the winter will do sort of classes where I'm just trying to run a business solely on the fact of sending flowers out, not on people coming and paying a bit of money to walk around it.
No. Fair enough. Yeah. Well, you need to do a book. Maybe that's the way that people can get to learn from you.
Can get to learn and see.
Yeah. Thank you, Alfie. That was really great, and so much interesting stuff and inspiration. So nature, flowers, country life, what could be better? Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks so much for listening to Grow Cook Eat Arrange with me, Sarah Raven, and this week, Alfie Nickerson. I hope that it was fun listening to him and all his incredible flower farming story. Next week, I'm on my own, and I'm actually starting a new sort of mini-series within the year of walking around the garden and picking what's looking lovely and noticeable, maybe 10 or 12 things each time. And then I'm going to talk about them and why I've grown them and where they're growing, how to grow them, why I love them. And so I'm going to try and do that every sort of 4 to 6 weeks all the way through the year in 2025. And so the first one will be next week. So join me then. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.